Happy Friday. Welcome to CPG Vibes number 193, episode 193. Slowly but surely, Gavin, we're getting to 200. How's it going, man?
It's going, man. I know we talked last week about some ice storms. Luckily for us, I think we dodged that for the most part. But Wade, we are in a snow winter weather advisory with massive gusts of wind. I think sustaining 30 miles an hour and upwards of 50. And I think you and I are projected somewhere between 4 and 8 inches of snow, my man.
It is so insane. I don't have a big driveway, and we cleared it and just because of what we got here, excuse me, last weekend were these huge chunks of ice, right? I mean, these huge, I mean, it was not huge chunks, but when I shoveled it, broke off in huge chunks. So I got all that, put it out in onto the sides, and now. I honestly don't know where the snow is going to go. I mean, if we get that much, I have no idea where it's going to go. But for those of you that don't know, Gavin and I are both in the greater kind of Midwest North Carolina area, right? Which Midwest, South, I don't know. We're in between. I'm
We're kind
close
of
to,
like we're in the South, I guess.
I always
Technically, these people down here, they say it's the South. I'm like, it's like kind of like the mid South, you
I always
know?
I always say it's, I got the mountains on this side, the beach on this side. So we're kind of like, yeah, right there. So North Carolina. And we're both Midwesterners, right? Gavin's from
Yep.
Michigan, I'm from Ohio. But we've been out of that area for a long time. Or like, for me, it's been 7 years. And how long has it been for you?
Jeez. We moved down here in 2019
Yeah, same
into
year, 7 years.
Asheville.
Yes,
Yeah.
7
So
years. It's been 7 years for me, and
yeah,
but we're not I say we, the state, the
state.
county, whatever, they're not equipped to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so any little bit of activity is a problem, but this is I mean, I think I don't know if I shared with you or not, but, we had a potential client send us samples, myself and Luke. Luke's in San Diego. I'm here in North Carolina from Wisconsin, and if you by car, Wisconsin's, I think, 13 hours. San Diego is like 30 hours. And Luke got his samples, I think, like on Wednesday of this week. And I was supposed to get mine. Mine arrived in Greensboro on Monday, which is 20 minutes from me. And I didn't get them until yesterday. They were 20 minutes from me, and they didn't get here till yesterday. They were on the truck on Wednesday, and evidently they decided, take them back, forget it. It was just, but it's been, all the services with recycle and trash were delayed. Uh, it's just a mess. Business.
Yeah.
I feel bad for, and I don't know what you're seeing down there because I live in a little bit smaller area, I think, than you do because you're the greater Charlotte area.
Yeah.
But I feel really bad for like restaurants, bars, and things like that because I'm hearing all these, I'm going to say sob stories, and I mean that with sympathy because no one's going out, except to the grocery store. I
No,
mean,
I mean, DoorDash is probably going to be on fire over the next couple days.
mm,
I don't know if they get surcharges or not, but like the grocery store is here. Like again, like I think they're really prepared for like hurricanes, and they know how to order for that and order ahead for that. The last week's been wild because we were projected for an inch of ice here. We ended up getting a quarter of an inch, which is pretty substantial, especially for down here.
mhm.
And then this week we're getting all that snow, but there's no salt trucks. You can't even find salts in a 100-mile radius of us right now. But we have no snow plows either. And then on top of that, we have a wind chill advisory for -20, which is really crazy cold for down here. That's typical cold for Michigan, Ohio when you have those bitter cold weekends and things like that. But the grocery stores have been hammered for the last couple
Oh
weeks.
yeah, and I was
And
going to say
last week,
we're going to turn this over to CPG. Here we go. Right? Okay, go.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
grocery stores, like our local Publix here has been pretty well good in stock. But it was funny, like there was a lines out the door for our local Home Depot for generators because obviously if you're projected for an inch of ice, there's going to be like the damage we saw in Nashville and Mississippi. Like you're going to be out of power for multiple days. So and then, fast forward to Tuesday, there's a line to return all those generators. And now, again, fast forward a couple more days, we have all this snow that's coming, and now all the retailers are getting beat up again. And what's unique about this is anytime we've got snow in the past, maybe it stays for like 8 hours or 12 hours. It's gonna stay here for a couple days because it's gonna be so cold at the same time. So
Yeah.
tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, there's not gonna be a lot of people on the roads because,
No.
if we do get somewhere between 4, it ain't going nowhere. And then
No.
on top of that, 30 to 50 mile per hour winds, it's crazy
Well, in the extended forecast, the temperature is not going to get above. I think what did I see? I don't know that it's getting above 40 degrees. So the
for a
snow's
while.
not going to get maybe 45, but
Yep,
it's not going to be cold, or I'm sorry, warm enough to melt. And so, especially if we get 3 to 6 inches, it's on top of what we already have. It's not going anywhere. But we had to share a little bit about what we're going through, and I think kind of translating that to CBG and going back to our days. You ran you obviously we're a executive with Earth Fare, and certainly I've been around in both conventional and natural retail, and the impact of this from an ordering standpoint, from a velocity standpoint, from a
truck
supply chain
standpoint.
standpoint. And when I say supply chain, the trucks being able to get to you. I mean, it's havoc, and so I think I've shared multiple times that I typically shop here locally, more often than not Lowe's Foods, and they do a great job. I mean, I
Yep,
love it. My wife actually works at the local one a couple days a week, and I know they've been for the most part, they've done a good job with staying in stock. But I mean, I don't know for sure if they're on computer assisted ordering, which computer assisted ordering becomes a problem with this because it's based on historical, right? And so you're
yeah.
ordering historically what you need until the next truck, and all those things, and you can't with computer assisted ordering. It's AI essentially, right? And it's great. However, um, when you have something like this where you're going to get bombed, right? I mean, you're going to get smashed at store level. The computer's not going to be ready for that. And
No.
so as such, you need someone, some manual interception,
On
to
your
y-
high velocity items, right? Like,
oh
I
my
mean, again,
gosh.
the Midwest will tell you it's gonna be bread, it's gonna be milk, it's gonna be butter, it's gonna be eggs, your essentials, and then obviously your meat and produce and things like that will get hammered. Um, but yeah, like if you're on auto ordering, Wade was Fresh Market when you were
Yeah,
there, were
yeah,
they on that?
absolutely, absolutely, and
Yep,
I have to first of all, I haven't said anything about our audience. So real quick, let me go through here. I see Robert, I see Steven, I see Jeff. This is like a romper bomper stomper thing. I don't know. I'm probably dating myself. I see Hugh, and most importantly, spotlighted on the page right now. I see. Speaking of former Fresh Market, Lauren Booth, who is one of my favorite people ever at the
tried
Fresh
to tee that
Market.
up for you, by the way.
And thank you, thank you. And now with Jade Street Consulting, kudos and shout out to them as well. But Lauren, she's exactly right. They're calling for 3 to 6. We'll either get 0 or 7. There's no in between. She's exactly right. But Lauren,
Yeah, and
appreciate you joining us.
I'm very much in that same mindset. Like, I know we're gonna get snow because, like, obviously there's a precipitation. Like, we're not gonna dodge that. We're not gonna dodge the cold weather. It's just a matter of, are we gonna get an inch or are we gonna get 8 inches or,
Yeah.
where is it gonna fall?
Yeah, and so going back to Fresh Market's on computer assisted ordering, and they have to, that human override has to exist on the key items. But right now, like going back to last weekend. Last weekend, the fear was power. You mentioned
Yep.
generators, so everyone was buying like canned goods and things that don't necessarily need refrigeration, and how that you can eat if you don't have electricity, right? And so this weekend it's snow, and so you've got shovels, you've got all these things. So the what they're buying is a little bit different this week. But my goodness, the water aisle has been killed. I can
Toilet
honestly
paper,
say, I'm in the opposite situation of Gavin, where Gavin is just starting his family with his twins and wife, and my wife and I are empty nesters. So and she's a vegetarian, I'm not, so we buy different things, and then on the weekends often we're going out to eat or whatever. I can tell you in the last 2 weeks I've spent more on groceries than I have, and I can't tell you how long, because I went this morning to avoid the mess after work, because I knew it was going to be a nightmare, because the snow's supposed to start around 7 or 8, I think tonight. And this morning it wasn't too bad. Store conditions were okay, but I'm thinking more than likely I'm not leaving the house before Monday, if then, right? And so last week it was kind of the same way. It's like with the ice, um, you can't you're not going out because the
Yeah.
roads and yeah, so it's been crazy. It's just been crazy,
Yeah,
but
it's again,
store conditions.
for us down here, like, we're just again, the states aren't equipped because I mean, again, why are you investing millions of dollars into snowplows if you don't get snow, right? Like, you're not it's just it doesn't make sense. So when we have an event like this, like, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And going back to distribution really quick, so, you said, your comments on Luke and you having, 5 days apart on getting samples or whatever, and Saturday, again, we were supposed to start getting ice sometime Saturday afternoon, and never really transpired until early Sunday morning for us. So we actually went out and upgraded our phones, because had, you know, we had iPhone 13s. Like it's been 4 years or 5 years since since we did that, and we still haven't got them, And, they were supposed to deliver Tuesday. Obviously, wherever they were being delivered from were impacted by the ice conditions and making it out our way. They're supposed to deliver today. Um, but that same thing applies for groceries, Unify, KeHE, whoever your grocery supplier is. Like you're going to have impacts. Store's going to have impacts, right? Uh, you know, if you're trying to shop Sunday afternoon, during the ice storm, or tomorrow, like you got to open the store. Someone's got to open the store, for the stragglers who need their last second milk or last second whatever's. But it's just like how staffed are those stores going to be, and then also, if you get 4 to 8 inches of snow, like I don't know what kind. I mean, look at all the car accidents
Yeah.
that's been happening across the freaking country at this point.
Right. Yeah, and as it was mentioned about, and I'm not picking on Lowe's Foods at all because everyone is in the same. Hugh, who joined us, and hi Melissa, see you too. Mentioned Costco, how crazy it was there. My wife actually works there a couple days a week, and they've just been bombed. I mean, it's just nonstop. And you went through the spell last weekend where everybody was in ahead of time, right? Stocking up for the weekend, and then the weekend was kind of quiet. They had reduced hours. I think Sunday, Monday, they opened a little bit later, closed a little bit earlier, and then got back to quote unquote normal on Tuesday. And then the fear of this weekend started. So then, bam, you're just trying to recover from what you dealt with last week, and then you're getting hit with a threat from this week, and so they're getting hammered all over again. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's labor, right? You have challenges with labor. I mean, don't get me wrong, the sales are through the roof.
Yep.
I think Wednesday when I was in there, self checkout lines for the cashier lines. I mean, it was just crazy. And this morning it wasn't too bad because I was there before everything got too crazy. But yeah, you know in past life when I was in more, I'll say conventional, not the fresh market because supply chain ran things at the fresh market. But when I was in conventional, we were trying to call for an extra truck on things like or if we typically got, I think, 5 trucks a week. There were 2 days a week that we didn't get a truck, but you would, perhaps get an extra truck because you were trying to get so much freight in that you knew you and so the ripple effect with trying to get in what you needed versus having enough people to put up what you needed was a challenge, right? I mean, I might need, making numbers up, like 2,000 cases, but I only have the personnel to throw 1,000 cases, and so it's really interesting. And then obviously, whether you talk about Unify, KeHE, or one of the more conventional distributors, they're not equipped. It's not like they have a crystal ball and they can see 2 weeks out that you're going to be 2 consecutive weeks. So they're trying to expedite POs. They're trying to get orders in to compensate for all this volume that's unexpected. So it's really a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So we'll see how the next couple days go here. I think we should segue into one of our topics, which is trade shows. I know that there was a Unify West trade show this week. I think that was out in Long Beach, California.
Mhm.
Wade, did you guys have any representation there?
We did not. I know we're doing KeHE next week, right? Next week, middle of the week, and that's in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. I believe
Denver?
Denver. I believe so. I believe
Yeah.
so. We did not do Unified Long Beach. I know some clients that were there. Excuse me, some friends that were there. Haven't heard a lot of good, bad, or otherwise coming out of that. I don't know. How about you?
I have literally not heard anything about the Unify show this week. That's been relatively quiet. I haven't even really seen any LinkedIn posts.
And there was also, speaking of Lauren Booth,
Chex
Chexpo,
Finer Foods.
Chexpo's, which,
Yep.
is challenging. Is the Northeast, where they have that show. I think it's in Hartford. I'm sure, it's always a challenge to get there, but then coming out of this area, I know Monday and I believe into Tuesday, a lot of the flights were canceled. Virtually all, I think Monday were canceled. And then, so I'm sure getting out of this area up there. So I'm curious as how that turnout was there.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, right? I mean, dating back to last Friday, because Dallas was getting hammered with that
Yep.
cold front ice storms that they were getting, and then that obviously just continued to shift uh, east, and just tens of thousands of flights canceled. So again, I haven't heard too much about that. With a West Coast show, obviously that's salespeople have to travel, brokers have to travel, and things like that. The West Coast retailers probably were okay, um, but yeah, it's definitely tricky. So, I did want to bring up trade shows just because this is kind of the kickoff of it. I think this is a very aggressive stretch all the way up until early March when Expo West happens. So, then there's a little bit of a layoff, and then May comes around and kicks things off again. So,
Right.
and then up in the east, I know that they got a bunch of snow too. I think parts of New York or upstate New York got upwards of almost 2 feet of snow, from what I heard from some of my friends up that way. So,
Yeah.
crazy stuff, man.
Welcome, Dan Weisbach, LA Libations. He says the Unify show is a great show. He's looking forward to next week. Khe as well. Lauren corrected me, which I needed corrected. The Chexpo was in Providence, Rhode Island, cold. And I remember last year, I was there last year, and it was cold, very cold, freezing. But let's see. We've got Jeff here. What is your take on the investment for founders in going to these trade shows? Question: does it still make sense with the current economic conditions? I remember Alex Bear, shout out, talking about how it may not be a good move for most. I'm gonna let
Yeah.
you start because you've been on the brand side, and I can certainly give my take. What I think, but I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think so. These buying shows, because I think that's what the or sorry, I think that's what the Unify ones are, right? The Unify ones are spring, summer selling, I think, or whatever.
Mhm.
So buying shows, I think, are advantageous to the founders if it makes sense for them. So if you've got good,
Make sure you clarify. Wait, I know what you're saying. Buying shows. So explain when you say buying show.
yeah,
We hear trade shows, we hear food shows. To you, Gavin Conkle definition. What is a buying show?
yeah. So if the spring and summer buying shows, that means that you are actually able to take orders at that show for the retailers that attend that show. So typically you would put together a show deal or no deal at all, but obviously it's a selling show, so you'd probably want to give them something. And you can do it manually right there with an iPad and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you are selling at that show. So you're selling to existing retailers uh, out of your West Coast DCs as an example. If you go to the West show, and then any independents or any other retailers that also pull out of those DCs where your items are set up and selling, you have an opportunity to also give them deals, right? So you can give them a free case, you can give them 10 free cases. Obviously would advise against that.
Mhm.
But you can create any kind of promotion that you really want to. You can do a buy 10 get 10. You can do a buy 60 get 5. Whatever, however you want to manipulate it, you can do it. And then after the show, you'll get a summary of how many cases you sold and how many new accounts you got. You can create lead lists with it and all that kind of stuff. So I think those shows can be impactful, because at the end of the day, like you're gonna have expenses of flying out more than likely, having a hotel room for 2 or 3 days, and then your show costs, whatever it costs to buy your table, or buy your booth, and then also shipping the product and all that kind of stuff. So if you can, prior to going to the show or at the show, if you can figure out a way to create an ROI for your product at that show, then I think that can be beneficial. I think if you go to that show and you just sell nothing, and you went to a buying show and so, like, what are you doing? You know, like, are you trying to introduce the product to new retailers? You weren't successful. Like, that's where it's tricky. So buying shows, I think, are really advantageous. A typical trade show, in my opinion, I think that really depends on the brand at the end of the day. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, are you trying to create more relationships? Are you just showing up? Are you trying to create new customers? Because a typical trade show, you're not going to be able to sell. You might be able to interact, but none of those things are guaranteed. There might be retailers that head to that show, and you can try to facilitate a meeting prior. That's becoming increasingly more difficult. So that's where it's like you kind of have to weigh those options.
Yeah.
Wade, what do you think?
No, I agree. I would say when I look at emerging brands, especially, unless you have bottomless pockets or are just extremely well funded, thing a play like Expo West is, it's the granddaddy of them all, or it's obviously it's huge, and so it becomes kind of like a status thing, right? Oh, I'm at Expo West, or at the end of the day, some of the larger brands that exhibit. I mean, you see some of these exhibits or these booths, if you want to call them that look like Taj Mahal. It's really about stature and like established brands that don't really need the exposure, right? They already have the business. They're already in probably every door. It's more or less about here, this is who we are. But when I look at emerging brands, uh, you know, especially when you look at some of these buying shows, I think they make sense if or tabletops, whatever you want to call them, they make sense if maybe you're not working with a broker and you're really trying to get out in front of retailers. You don't, maybe you've tried, reaching out via portals or whatever your choice of reaching out to retailers is when you're working on your own without a service agency. So exposure at those shows is a little bit less from an investment standpoint, and if you're really truly looking to get out in front of them, that's can be a good way to do it. I would pick and choose. I mean, I wouldn't go to all of them. I would make sure I have, whether it's, excuse me, region focused, like, okay, I've identified, I don't know, 6 to 8 targets, and they're out of this region, which pull from this DC, which makes sense, from a logistics standpoint, that they're going to be at the show theoretically. And so I think you have to think about it long and hard. But I think, I left Robert's quote up here, or quote, question, whatever you want to say. He's referring to Lapari, which is a great distributor back in our neck of the woods, right? In the greater
Hmm.
Michigan area. And they serviced us in Ohio. They have a one day only show. You have to be at the show to get the deal. So they're incentivizing their retailers and their customers to come to
Yep.
that show. You have to buy the show. And when I went to school, we walked uphill both ways. The first shows that I went to, that's exactly the way they operated. You walked, I think I talked about this. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. You walked out of that show, at the time it was like vouchers, right? They wrote up, okay, here's how much money you got for buying so many cases, but you had to place the order at the show. And over time, and I think a lot of, even still to this day, some of these buying shows, they establish a window where the ordering portal is open after the fact, and that might be variable based on the size of your account. If you're a one store operator, maybe it's not. If you're 200 stores, it probably is. So they give some flexibility as far as that goes. But as far as incentivizing that day or days of the show that you have to place an order, I think those days have kind of, maybe with Robert's exception there, maybe they've kind of gone by the wayside, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been to the Perry show before. That obviously is a unique show. It's usually themed too, so they create an event around it. Um, I'm not uh, I'm not sure on the Chexpo, like if that's somewhat similar or if that's just a typical trade show for brands that are in Chex and distributed by Chex. But yeah, it feels like again, I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week or whatever. Um, I know those warehouse uh, uh, trade shows were fun because again, you got the deal if you went to the show and you could sell a lot of product.
Yeah.
So it's definitely tricky now from that standpoint.
Yeah. We have Melissa's asked if anyone was attending the meat conference com in Maryland. I don't know about that one. Maybe someone was. Hugh says trade show before buying show. You need to establish market presence, build your brand and distribution into distribution. Phase two is to move to buying shows to grow and develop. Yeah, don't disagree with that.
Yeah, and I would just say look, there's no right or wrong answer here. I think if you have a budget, you or if you don't have a budget, you should create one. But you just need to understand like what you're trying to get out of each of these trade shows. Like if you're trying to get more distribution, then a buying show is definitely worth the price of admission. You know, as long as you feel like you can sell and actively sell to each person who passed by your booth, and you make it known that that is your goal. Um, I think, going back to when I first started walking these natural organic trade shows back in 2015, I think GTs was still going to some of these trade shows. And then, those bigger brands, like, they just don't need to be there.
Right.
Like, I think they phase themselves out. I think Amy's phased themselves out of these trade shows because they have such a presence. What that does, though, is it opens up opportunities for some of the competitors to, create noise or create excitement around their brand and that kind of thing. So, um, there I think each brand just has to understand like what they want to accomplish with going to. If you're just going to a trade show to go to a trade show, then you shouldn't have a booth,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, Melissa's comments. She agrees too many shows drains the budget, distracts from managing the business. She agrees with Robert, without a doubt. Lapari has been one of the best selling shows. And I think the other thing you can do, and I know I've given this advice before, is if you're wondering, don't buy a booth, buy just entry, right? Buy a ticket to go in, walk, get the vibe, see what you're in for, to see if you're ready, right? I mean, it's going to still be going to be expense, but if you're not sure, go there and see kind of what you can expect. One of these shows, you can do that without buying a booth, and you can walk it, see what the attendance looks like, uh see if it makes sense for you down the road, which is usually, just buying a ticket to walk is going to be less than buying a booth. And you can kind of see what that looks like. You can typically participate in some of the networking events and stuff around the show, especially the bigger shows. So that's an option too, and I would highly suggest that before investing before you're ready. I feel like that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Um, well, with that, Wade, why don't we? I know we're after the first of the year. Means category reviews are kind of back in full swing. We're out of the holiday grind, so uh, those retailers out there where there's category managers that manage multiple categories, now you're probably in the thick of, you're starting your category reviews off, and maybe if you are very specific with the categories you manage, maybe you were doing some of that stuff in October, November, December of the past year, the last quarter. Wade, what? Let's just talk about category reviews. What's the process that you guys use as a broker to facilitate that with your brands?
Yeah, I want to say this real quick because we want to stay on this topic. But Lauren said
Yes.
Chexpo is a summer selling trade show. Some brands participate in the power buys, show deals for summer selling. Awesome, Lauren. Appreciate you sharing
Thank you.
that. For category reviews, for us, first and foremost, you have to determine the scope, right? I mean, so you have to understand the brand that you're working with. Is it a region? Is it national? Is it a retailer specific? Who's on their target list, right? And then you have all these calendars. You're managing when those reviews are, what the submission windows are. Obviously, requesting meetings as far as to get out in front. If it's a portal submit, all those different things you have to do. But I think you have to have clear visibility on what the target list is, right? And something we've been talking about since the beginning of time, about being an inch wide and a mile deep. Um, Hopefully, without having those bottom pockets I talked about, or the funding that just never is ending, you have a clear vision on who your target list is. And I always talk about, the other thing I talk about is understanding the way the process works as it relates to, some of the bigger retailers. I mentioned the fresh market. If often with an early stage brand, especially some of the ones, some of the real early stage brands where there no distribution or very very small distribution getting started, maybe they say, well, I'm not ready for this now. And that's perfectly fine. And I agree with that. Build that regional presence, local presence, regional, and so on. But you also have to have the forward visibility to 18, even 24 months down the road. Because when you say you're not ready now, perfectly fine. And I agree with it in many cases. But you also have to have the working knowledge that by saying I'm not ready now, very well could mean with a retailer like the Fresh Market or some of these larger retailers, that by bypassing a review that's happening now with execution on shelf in June, you now are prolonging potentially that timeline 18 to 24 months. And so if you're not ready now, but you're ready in 6 months, just have that understanding that the way the category review process works for these larger retailers, it's typically, aside from some oddball category, or not oddball, but more different categories, it's typically happening once per year. And if you
Yeah,
choose
retailers ain't waiting for you.
no, no. It's happening once per year, and there are exceptions to that, right? I mean, you can in some cases, some retailers are receptive and accepting of off-cycle reviews. They might have a speed to shelf program where you can bypass, the windows, or they might not even have a category. But these larger, more deliberate and focused retailers that are typically once per year, you're going to be waiting potentially 18 to 24 months until your product's on shelf. And that's perfectly fine, provided that that's within your timeline and everything that you're looking at. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I've got lots of thoughts. I think from your perspective, that's something that I would really stress to me as a brand, right? Like,
Every time. There's two things I always say. I always say what I just said about, and then also the 4 to 6 month window. As far as, if I start working with you today, it is going to take 4 to 6 months for us to start to see traction. And
yep,
because of everything we just talked about, because of reviews, because of the understanding that today, now, even if you're not following a review, so you start working with me today, I've got a month of onboarding that I've got to do. From there, I can turn my sales team loose and go after low hanging fruit that don't follow reviews. But let's just say we start working today, 3, 4 weeks onboarding, whatever it may be. Cut it to, let's say, 2 weeks. Then I can start making meeting requests for retailers. Then I have to wait for them to hopefully give me a meeting, which is going to take several weeks. And then so I get in front of the retailer. They love the product. They want to bring it in. You don't have distribution yet. They can anchor. Great. You have to wait for distributor setup. They have to sell through existing inventory on the shelf. The shelf's not empty waiting for new products. They have to sell through discontinued product, which often is why slotting fees come into play. And so there's this all this that has to happen. So I always say 4 to 6 months to start to see traction, right? And so those are things that I always tell Brandon when we start, is the category review, explaining how that works, because often you're dealing with people that don't understand it, or I just want to be crystal clear in expectations to start. And then I also talk about the 4 to 6 month traction.
yeah, I think again, like that's something that I would want that clarity from a broker very, very early, probably during the on or probably during, like, the dating process, right? Where it's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about, um, partnering up with you and all that kinda stuff." Like, when should I expect to start landing into retail? And I think that's something that I would wanna understand, and which like, that target list that you talked about earlier, um, have those reviews already happened, you know? Like, are we gonna have to wait 9 months to talk to Publix or talk to Wegmans or talk to HEB or talk to Central Market? Because if that's the case, maybe I'm signing this contract way too early and, you know, for better or worse, pissing away some money, and really understanding that. Because I mean, you don't, at least me in my specific situation, I wouldn't want to pay 6 months retainer if all my key accounts had just went through the review process 3 months ago, you know?
That's always the challenge, and I put my broker hat on and give you the counterpoint to that is, you're never going to time it up. You're right. Your key accounts is one thing. I agree with that, because if you have key targets, and for whatever reason they all have their ducks in a row and they all have their category reviews in a consolidated time frame, which doesn't always happen. Seasonality plays into it a little bit, but I think you're always going to miss a review. Now, to your point, if you have some gold stars or north stars, whatever you want to call them, that this is the top of my list, this is who I want to get into, and yes, they just had their review, totally get it. But my challenge or my counterpoint to that is you're always going to have someone to work on. You know what I mean? Whether
Yep.
it's non-category reviews or what have you. And I think the other thing that a lot of brands mistake when working with a sales agency, so they say, okay, the category reviews in November. Well, I'll wait to engage the broker or sales agency till November. You have to think about the onboarding process. You have to think about you should be talking, I think, in August or September, start having that conversation. You don't want to wait until November, say, I'll start paying November 1 for category review that's happening in November. You're not getting you need to be in front of it, right?
1,000%. I tell every founder that I work with that, like, my goal is to plant seeds. Some of these seeds, they're gonna sprout, plants or trees or whatever in the first year. Some of them are gonna take 2 years to start growing, right? And what I mean by that is, like, obviously, you're good if you got a good product, you're gonna get wins in that first year. You might get traction with some really good retailers, and that's cool too. M but I just know, like, working with the founders that I've worked with, they're always gonna wanna chase Walmart, they're always gonna wanna chase Target, they're always gonna wanna chase Costco, and that's what I mean by seed planting.
Yep.
You're gonna wanna plant those seeds and get ahead of it, right? Like, if Target is reviewing their category in May, it's really good to start planting those seeds right now because the buyer might be doing some early research, or your broker might have a good relationship with the buyer. You can send your product off to that broker and they can soft intro it for you, right? Or request a meeting leading up to the review. Um, just get those quick talking points. So I don't think it's ever too early to have a broker conversation, but they just need to they just need to. And this is a good comment from Steve. New founders always underestimate time to shelf and time required to create a new product. That is very important to understand. So again, like, what I would say as VP of sales or head of sales or whatever, you're always planting seeds. Some of them are going to come to fruition faster. Um, but if your review is in November and you think signing up in August is a good idea, that might actually be too late.
Right, right. Dan's comment, again, Dan Weisbach, LA Libations. One thing that has helped with us is proving a submission roadmap in the beginning of a relationship. Transparency is key. Exactly. That's why I always say is the 4 to 6 months, the talking about the review, how long it takes, and all those things. If your sales agency isn't being transparent with you, probably want to probably should be a little bit of a red flag there. But I talk about that all the time too. I talk about greasing the wheels, right? I mean,
Yep.
it maybe again, your category manager for especially, I'm not going to say smaller retailers, but your non Walmart, Costco, these big boys, right? More often than not, these category managers are going to have multiple categories, right?
Yep.
Speaking it in my past, every place I've been, every category manager had multiple categories. So your category manager, you might have an appointment to them now in January. It's probably a little bit early, but I'm just going to pick on soup. So you might be talking about soup now for a July, August reset, getting ready for soup season coming up. And you might have a new client that is, I don't know, water or a beverage, right? And it's the same category manager that manages it. So you have an appointment for the soup and you're going in front of them. You've got a new client with water. It's not time for the category review, but you bring in a bottle. You bring in.
Mhm.
You can't say, "Hey, I know it's not time, but I wanted to get this in front of you, so we'll be. You're familiar with it. Come review time. And you're just
Yep.
giving a sample. Hey, check this out. This is a new client we're working with. You're greasing the wheels, right? And
I
so,
had
yeah,
I had a couple really good brokers, Presence being one of them and Greenspoon being another. Actually, quite a few. Sorry, Acosta did this with us, and a couple of the other ones. But they would come in with a tote bag,
yep,
and there'd be some category review stuff in there. But then it's just like, hey, here's some other stuff. Here's some waters, here's some olive oils, and that's always good. Again, it's some freebies, and it's soft selling. I know you're reviewing meat alternative right now, but here's a goodie bag of some of the other stuff that we have that we'd like to talk about with you in the future. And that's a really nice way to you get the buyer to maybe engage or try it. You know, I think personally, like if there's a bag of chips in there or a protein bar or something drinkable, that's easy to crack open right away, and you can get feedback on that relatively fast. That could be an exciting conversation. So I would always recommend, some type of goodie bag as a broker to a buyer, um, with the brands that you
We're talking
represent.
a can here, a bag here, not cases,
Not
obviously,
cases,
not
and
cases.
again, there's definitely brands that go around with cases. So,
Yeah.
um,
I'm gonna ask you Robert's question.
yeah,
Can you
I
get a
wanted to put
big
out.
chain without proven velocity in local or regional? And I'm gonna throw that to you because you're the brand guy.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I think we did that quite a few, or I did that quite a few times over the last year plus with the previous company that I was with, and sometimes if you have a really innovative brand and it speaks to the buyer, some of those buyers are going to be able to, roll the dice on you or roll the dice on the brand. I think it goes back to the relationship that you potentially have with the buyer, the broker's relationship that they potentially have with the buyer, and then the style of product that you have, right? If it's kind of a white space skew and a buyer is, forward thinking and ahead of the time and not so much reactionary, I think then there's a decent opportunity that you can get placements without showing velocity. They might be gambling on newness, or innovation, or the innovative style of your product. Um, but in saying that, the next hardest thing, if they do accept that, is you have to perform. And you can't sweet talk buyers once you're on shelf. Because now the data speaks to what what's actually happening. So you should always go into retail with a very open mind and understand that, a win isn't getting it on shelf. That is a very, very uh, inappropriate way to look at it. When you're winning at retail is when there's recurring purchase orders happening regularly, and your velocity is at the threshold you need to be in your category or exceeding that.
I agree. Completely agree. Yeah, so category reviews. It's I don't think you can ever educate yourself enough as a brand, as a broker, on how they work. And what has your experience been with dealing it from the brand side with regards to managing when those reviews are best practices from a brand side. Broker, you have a sales agency, you don't have a sales agency, you still in some way shape or form as a brand, excuse me, are tracking that those reviews. And so how are you preparing with your sales agency, in parallel with sales agency, or on your own? How are you doing that?
Yeah, I'll plug Jade Street Consulting here really quick, just because I've used them for the last couple of years, or on and off the last couple of years with my last couple of gigs, and they have a pretty sophisticated tracker that tracks every single retailer, and if they're category review or if they're not. Melissa does a really good job of organizing that, and on that tracker is call cadence, how often that they're reaching out to the retailer, what the feedback is. If it's positive, it's negative, it's very open, it's very transparent, and then when the review is. So I think that's a really good guide, right? So that's something that you can show results from, prepare for, and use for positive or negative feedback, whatever that feedback is with the buyer. But also as like a salesperson, you can't use that as your Bible. Like you have to read in between the lines a little bit. Like, all right, should I reach out?
Mhm.
Does the brand need to get involved here? If a team member on her side has reached out 3 times, it hasn't got a response. When is it appropriate for the brand to step into that conversation? I think that's a working conversation that each brand probably has with their broker. But that was a good way for us to all more or less be aligned with where we were at. I was one salesperson working with her entire team, and it is a lot. But at the same time, like, you're not gonna get wins everywhere, right? Nor do I think brands want to get wins everywhere. I think you have to be able to support the retailers that you can and understand that as you grow, you need more cash because you need to create more product, buy more product, supply more product, slotting costs, all that stuff. So it's one of those things that continues to snowball as you grow. So yeah, that was something that she utilized, and it worked for us really well.
Nice, nice. Before you go back to that, Hank is doing our plug for us. Thanks, Hank. I know for a fact I have the show's 5 stars on Spotify years ago, but I checked it today and it wasn't there. May want to suggest people check if their rating disappeared. So we'll segue to a cheap plug real quick. If you haven't, or you haven't in some time, go back to Spotify, go back to Apple Podcasts, go to YouTube, give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever the case is, whatever you have to do. Leave a written recommendation too if you haven't done that. That helps. Anything you can do. And if you're just joining us, maybe for the first time in a long time or the first time ever, we do have all the, there's all 194 episodes are on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. I think we're probably 80-ish% on YouTube. I don't know that every single episode's on YouTube, but most of them are. So if you want to listen back to some of these old episodes, encourage you to do that. So that's all the plugging we're doing. Yeah. So category reviews are just, like I said, it's just very, very interesting. And then, uh, you know, the, the thought that goes into them, the execution. So I want to get into the feedback piece of it a little bit because you mentioned about tracking that feedback. What I want to move the broker piece out of it for a second.
Yeah,
Just think of it just from a brand standpoint,
yeah,
okay? And we could I don't need to remove the broker. We can leave it. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
So you submit for a review. Obviously, if you pay a sales agency, ultimately you're hoping to leverage a relationship they have, or you feel they're going to do as better, if not better than you do. So you're obviously investing in that and you're paying for that service. And they're going to ask for a meeting, ideally, if the retailer accepts meetings. Not everybody does. They may or may not get the meeting. So they go through the process, may or may not get the meeting, but the submission's in. How do you as a brand react to the whole review process? I mean, broker or otherwise, I don't care how you answer it, but what I mean by that is, okay, so you go through, you had a meeting, you didn't have a meeting, you submitted, the waiting game starts.
Mm.
How do you handle the waiting game? And then the follow-up and execution and the from the waiting game and beyond, how do you handle that?
Yeah. I really good question. So, I
And
handle it really well.
I was gonna say, if I need to ping Melissa here, we can do
No,
that.
no, no.
Yeah.
I handle it really well because, like, again, I understand, especially on the buyer side, right? Like, you and I both know that when you're going through a category review process, like, it's a step-by-step process, and then once you make your decision, it's a step-by-step process. You have to eliminate product at the store level, old product, meaning the stuff that you're removing, mark down, blah, 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 creating the new set, drop the new set, all that kind of stuff. I understand that. I think a lot of people don't understand that, you know? So, when, we talk to Sprouts or when we talk to Whole Foods or when we talk to these large retailers where it's like, "Hey, we're reviewing in November and it resets next November or it resets next August." A lot of people are like, "What? Like, we can't just be in there tomorrow, right?" I understand that that's what the process is. There's gonna be some random one-offs where maybe Sprouts has reviewed soda, and they're going to cut in another soda in 6 months. That's not going to happen for everybody. It might happen because a a a nice set of events happened, and maybe someone went up the food chain a little bit, or someone knew someone who knew someone at Sprouts on the executive level, and they pushed it through. Right? That definitely happens. Doesn't happen often. So I handle it really well where, you go into a meeting with Meyer or whatever, and you have a blueprint, right? Like, I think something that I always ask is, when is this going to launch in stores, right? If I get accepted, when do I launch? And if Meyer tells me, "Hey, it's going to launch May 1st." Okay, cool. I know it's going to be May 1st. And again, you can just kind of backtrack a little bit from there. It's just like, okay, May 1st, KeHE will more than likely order product April 1st. 2-week lead time, gets in the DC sometime by April 15th. And then it sits in there for a week or 2 weeks. And then it's planned demand out to those stores, and voila, you're good. So again, I think I handle it pretty well. If the meeting went good, decisions need to be made in the next 3 months. Okay, you're waiting. I think there is a point where, um, if you have a hard cutoff saying in that meeting where they said, "Hey, I'm going to give you results by August 1st," and it's August 5th, and you still don't have results, you talk to the broker first
Mhm.
and say, "Hey, is this normal?" Or maybe you don't even wait until the 5th. Maybe you're actually planning that out at like July 25th. Like, it's like, okay, hey, we should know August 1st. What's our plan of attack if we don't hear here? eh, maybe something starts happening on August 5th, 5 days later, and the broker reaches out, not you. That's where I would start, because they should have the relationship there, or they have the relationship with the Unifier KeHE account manager, and that's who they ping first before annoying the buyer. Um, and then if it's like still haven't heard anything, maybe that's where now the brand gets involved with a KeHE or Unify account manager, or there's a direct message from the broker to the buyer um, with the brand on CC or whatever. Obviously, this is very open, and this just my initial thoughts, but that's
Mhm.
kind of where I stand on some of that stuff.
No, that's good. And so the follow up question to that is: so you've been declined
Mm,
or gotten ghosted,
mm,
and you had and you haven't got obviously it didn't happen, right?
yep,
And so you may or may not have gotten feedback. What as a brand? What's your plan of it? This is a target retailer. This is a
yep.
not the target, a destination retailer for you. It's someone you want to be in, and you got declined. How how do you take the feedback if you get the feedback, and or if you get no feedback? What's your plan of attack for the next review?
Yeah, really good question. So if there's feedback, I think that's always a starting point of good, right? Like, whether it's negative or positive, any feedback is good feedback. The buyer could say your product tastes bad, too sweet, too bold, whatever. That's feedback, right? Hopefully you can correlate that back to demos at other accounts and understand like where the buyer is coming from. So you take that back to whoever you report to, or marketing, or the formulation people, or whatever the feedback is. Maybe the packaging's not good. Okay, like that's again something you've talked about a lot on this show is no CEO wants to be told that their baby's ugly, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's feedback that the buyer is saying. So if it's the first time you've gotten negative feedback, okay, maybe it just didn't hit the taste buds right, or maybe they're just not seeing what we see. Um, if you're having a lot of success in market and you got told no and there's negative feedback, that's where I think I'd probably reach out to the buyer directly with the broker on CC, and try to get a little bit more feedback, right? Knowing that, look, they've made a decision. It's unlikely that they're going to reverse their decision, but you want to get clarity. You want to close the door. I think that's important. And you should always shoot your shot on that side, um, especially if it's a key target. If it's a key target, you kind I can't say you should empty your briefcase, but you should exhaust a couple options trying to get that dialed in. Um, if you've been told no a lot and it's another no, I don't. That's a little bit tougher, like,
Right.
or if you've been told no a lot and you got ghosted. I think that's open for interpretation at that point, and maybe there's something going on with the product or packaging or something with the brand itself. But I think if you've got traction in the market, you have some difficult feedback or ghosted, that's where that's where planting the seed, right? Try to start building that relationship, because they are a key target. Give them some bullet points. Try to keep it very not desperate, but like, hey, we're actually performing in your market. Here's some data with some like retailers, and thank you for considering us. Be super gracious and all that kind of stuff, but plant that seed and see if that thing can grow.
So I don't have the answer to this, but something you just said, I want to kind of push back at, not push back, but just kind of get your thoughts. So they made the decision; it's a no.
Yep.
So for you to come back and say, well, but we're performing really, it is, when is the time to do that? Is it when you've gotten the no, or you know what I mean? Because I'm putting my buyer and asking you to put your category manager hat on here and say, okay, I've made my decisions, I've communicated these decisions. Your kid's not starting on Monday or Sunday, whatever the case is. You're on the bench, or you're in the bleachers until next year. Uh, do you, as a category manager, want the brand to count? I say thank you for the opportunity. We'll prove ourselves in space and try again next year. But do you want a, well, we're performing good in the market? How do you receive that as a decision maker?
Yeah, as a category manager, like, I would already have a pretty good idea how you're performing because I just did a category review, right? So
Right.
that probably would have been in your deck. That probably would have been in the data that I was looking at, whether it's spins or RI or whatever it is. So I should have been able to see all that. What I would prefer as a buyer, um, like if someone reached out to me on that and I told them no, like I'm
You're not
not
going
gonna
to
make
change
the
your mind,
space.
right?
Yep,
Right.
yeah. Nothing's really gonna change my mind on that. At the end of the day, I can take a meeting and provide more feedback if that's what they wanted. Can't do that for everybody, but if someone was very, concerned or whatever, that they didn't make it in, I would try to set aside 5 minutes and try to explain to them. Also, it depends on the tone in which they're speaking to me,
Right.
via email or through the broker. And like through the broker is going to be the best way. Like the broker can deliver the news a lot easier than the buyer can, right? I think also if that person is really eager to learn or really eager to get your feedback, which again, I'm saying out loud, but that can just be their way of playing you too, right?
Mhm.
And you know, so buyers have to be very cognizant of that because, again, they're gonna use you to get into your stores and you can't have blinders on, right? Like you have to see they're telling you exactly what you want to hear.
Right. I'm thinking about, some of these, like a cold case review or a beverage category review where you literally at a bigger store get hundreds of submissions. Not, maybe not hundreds plural, but could be well over 100. And you maybe are bringing in, if you're lucky, what, 20 brands if you're lucky, maybe. Um and so there's going to be a lot of no's. And so I'm
Mhm.
thinking to myself, okay, if I start getting emails back from the 70 plus people that I told no to. How am I going? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, here's the data. It's like we've already done, but I love what you said about the feedback and someone that really truly wants to learn. Like, is there something I can do better next time?
Yeah.
Something I can do to be better prepared for next year, or
I'm jaded,
yeah,
Wade,
yeah,
because like, I've given that opportunity to other people and then you do get in the stores or the brand gets in the stores and then they ghost you, right?
yeah,
So it's just like you just got used and abused. So
yeah.
that's where I think a good buyer, when they're doing the reviews, I understand providing no feedback, and a lot of retailers don't provide feedback. I think obviously good buyers will, and that's a good way for uh emerging brand especially to learn. So
So, and I know we're at time here, but we could keep going on this for a while. Question I have, as a brand, and again, agnostic to a broker. I don't care if it comes from a broker or comes to the retailer. If Would you rather, as a brand, receive zero feedback or generic feedback that really gives you, and doesn't fit the goals of the category, not enough space,
Yeah, the
something like
generic
that.
feedback, I don't like the generic feedback because, like,
So would you
if
rather, as a brand, would you rather get nothing or one of those lines as a brand?
I'd probably rather get nothing because, like, uh, the easiest cop out is space, right? Like, I don't have enough space, and that is something that a lot and look, it's valid, it's
Copy
warranted, I
paste,
get it.
copy paste.
Yeah, but it's not meaningful for a brand, especially emerging one, to hear that, right? Like, "Oh, we don't have a space for you." Okay, cool. Like, you as a brand, you want something more concrete that's specific to the product that you just pitched. So, eh, good feedback would be like, "Hey, it's too sweet. It's too spicy. It's, you know, got a bad aftertaste." Like, that's feedback that, again, if you've done demos, uh, maybe you can correlate that back to something. So I'd rather just get ghosted, no feedback, because all that stuff is generic and it's not helpful anyways.
Yeah, I always say, a good salesperson, broker, whatever you want to call it, is going to try to the best of their ability, and
Yeah,
there's restraints here with relationships and whatnot. But is it pricing? Is it packaging? Is it an attribute that you have or don't
yeah.
have? Is it an ingredient? Is it? I might have said that twice. Is it a taste? What is it that takes to get to a yes? What is stopping it from being a yes? And if you can nail it down and get that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I
So
think that's like going back, and I know we're at time, but like I think that's what's impactful about those pitch slams that you guys do. It's impactful with those in-person meetings that you can get, or even like those even Zoom meetings. As long as they're trying the product and you can get that feedback there. If it's just a blind submission, man, wait, I can't tell you how many submissions I've had where you don't know where it goes, right? Thank you for submitting. And you get your confirmation email, and then you get your rejection letter 2 or 3 weeks later, right?
yep,
Like, that's difficult. And again, kind of tying this up, that's why sometimes it is impactful to go to those trade shows because those retailers are going to be there. You've submitted before, and now you can run into Wade Yenny and say, "Hey, Wade, I sent you samples 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago and never got feedback," and puts you on the spot a little bit,
yep.
but possibly that one interaction can turn a no into a yes or a
Open
maybe,
the door.
open the door,
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
really what this is all about.
yeah, and I think to that point, I say this all the time too. Is it's very easy to send those generic uh, copy paste,
Yeah,
no space, whatever. It's very easy to do that on an email, but you hit the nail on the head. If you, it's harder as a buyer to have to look Gavin in the eye and say, your brand sucks or this or that. I you're kind of putting me against the wall that I kind of have to look you in the eye and give you an answer in that case. So
and
I,
Wade,
I
when
think
we
that's
go to
great.
trade show as a buyer, when we go to trade shows, you definitely get that,
Yeah,
right?
hundred
Like,
percent.
it definitely is something that as you're walking up and down, whether it's Expo West or Unify or KeHE, all those booths, right? More than likely, the buyer, or sorry, not the buyer, the brand, let's just say Salty Snacks, they know who the salty snack buyer is for Fresh Market or
Right.
Jimbo's or Rouse's, right? They can look you up on LinkedIn. They can get a pretty good idea of what you look like from a facial recognition standpoint, maybe nothing else. Um, but if they did the research, they're gonna have an idea of what you look like, and they can stop you, in the
Yeah.
hall.
Yeah.
Uh, let's leave with this. Do buyer's party. Uh,
Depends on the buyer.
Hank clearly didn't know me 10 years ago as a buyer.
Right, right, right on. Well, we'll be back here next Friday, same time. I don't know. Do we have a guest next week? Who knows? Well, if we do,
Yeah.
we'll announce it. We might not. Might be Gavin and I. But if there's something you'd like us to talk on a topic or something like that, shoot us a message. We'll hit it up. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, and we're gonna go get ready for Snowmageddon, whatever
Let's
it is.
do it.
And I have
Thanks,
to
everybody.
say, make sure you watch Royal Rumble this weekend. It's tomorrow. So
Yeah.
WWE. See you, brother.
Later.